I I do know that the Islamic Republic is going to fall. I think what people might not necessarily understand is how it's going to fall. No totalitarian dictatorship has ever been overthrown by people just going out into the streets. And the reason is because that totalitarian dictatorship has access to all the weapons, all the guns, has access to the military, and Iranian people are unarmed. So every single time Iranians rise up, they're brutally suppressed, not just by regime forces, but they also bring in their proxy forces like Hezbollah, the Houthis, Hamas, Hashd Shabi. They also bring in proxy forces from like Nigerian militants and Pakistani militants as well. Islamic Republic has no support from the Iranian people. They stay in power through violence and force and suppression. I truly believe the Islamic Republic is going to be overthrown, but I don't think it's going to be by people taking en masse to the streets. I believe what's going to happen is we're going to see a military coup d'etat.
Thank you, and welcome back to another edition of the Coptic Cave. Capping off our Iran week, I have an incredibly special guest. She was born in Iran, moved to Canada at the age of 1, became an attorney, became a member of parliament. She is the author of Pro Tips from an Iranian, the Unfiltered Guide to Politics in the Middle East, available on Kindle. She is a
For pre-order.
For pre-order. She is a Zionist, and most importantly, relevant to the discussion today, she is the most fierce advocate for Iranian freedom and a fierce, probably the most fierce opponent of the IRGC. Khanum Goldie, or Goldie Khanum, thank you so much for being here. If there's anything I left out, please feel free to fill in the blanks.
That was actually very, very kind intro. Thank you, Mike. I really, really appreciate that. Thanks for having me on. My book is for pre-order, so I don't know if I would, but I guess I am. I am the author of Pro Tips from an Iranian, Your Unfiltered Guide to the Middle East. So it's kind of exciting. It is my first book, and I've always wanted to write a book, and I have so many ideas, but this one just kind of made sense. So I'm glad this is my first one, and I'm glad to be here to talk to you, and thank you for focusing on Iran. Like not a lot of people speak about it, so it's always nice to know that we have allies out there.
مشکلی ندارم. Listen, I want to regularly feature and platform Iranian voices because Zan, Zendegi, Azadi, women like freedom, it is something that I hold dear to my heart. And before we even get started, I know I expressed this to you in private, but I also want to express this to the viewers. It was not that long ago where Goldie and I were on complete opposite ends, of the Israel-Arab conflict fight. So I did apologize to her in private for the maybe perhaps unsavory things I might have left on her social media, and I want to do that also in public because I said to myself, whenever I have the chance with somebody who used to be an opponent of mine, I do want to express my regret and just say to you publicly, I am sorry for those things. I could not be happier that you're here with me and you gave me the chance. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I mean, I appreciate the apology, Mike, but also at the same time, I actually didn't know what you were saying about me, so you could have not even brought it up, and I wouldn't have even known that you were saying things about me. I'm kind of curious now as to what you actually said about me that you feel that you need to apologize for. I want to know what you said now that you brought it up.
So I remember you had a post where you said something about Arab Muslims have been killing Iranians for 1400 years. I think it might have been on TikTok, and it just struck me the wrong way. But I mean, you were pretty much dead on. But I was in my feels. I was being sensitive about it. I didn't want to acknowledge the reality, and including the fact that Arab Muslims have been killing Coptic Egyptians for just as long. So
and they actually managed to erase your language, right? The reason that they weren't able to erase Farsi, or Persian as we call it in English, is because we had certain authors who were able to revive our language, but unfortunately the Coptics, you guys didn't have that, and so you've lost your original language due to Arab conquest. So I mean, I'm glad that you've kind of woken up to that fact, because there's a reason that people all across the Middle East and North Africa speak Arabic, and you know, we should be able to talk about the Arab Muslim conquest the same way that we talk about the British colonization, right? Like it's no different. And yet when we talk about British colonization, you know, we're not attacked. But when we talk about the Arab Muslim colonization, there's still that, you know, for some reason there's feelings there, I guess. And, you know, when I talk about it, I'm not attacking, you know, present day Muslims or present day Arabs, but I mean, it is a historical fact. It is something that, you know, we should be able to talk about because, I mean, it is a reality. And I'm just glad that you were able to come to that on your own. So, I mean, no need to apologize, but, you know, I'm just glad that we're on the same page now and you're able to see that.
Well, you know, you were quick to block, so you probably didn't give me much of a chance to talk too much. But, you know, respect to you because I do the same thing. So,
I mean, again, like I don't debate people on social media because it's just social media is full of trolls. So, I mean, if someone is swearing or saying something rude, like I'll just block them. Yeah, I am. I just block.
There's no need to engage and entertain them. Really, there's no need to indulge them. They actually feed off the attention, so it's better.
100%.
It's better to just deprive them. It's their oxygen. It's their oxygen.
So how does it feel being on the other side? Welcome, welcome. We're a very big tent. We're very diverse, as you can probably see.
It feels amazing. You know, one thing that I always say, if I had to pick my favorite difference between the two sides, is in order to do this, I've literally never had to bend the truth or lie. Literally not once. When you're on the other side, you have to circumvent the truth, you have to bend the truth. At times, you have to willingly lie and spread info that you know is false. So, you know, being a Zionist, oh, absolutely, absolutely. And many, I'm not going to say all or most, but many people who are on the other side and somewhat educated, because they're not all stupid, they know that this is the truth. They know that a lot of what they're putting out there is false. And it's a very thin veneer that you can pierce through to get to the truth.
You know, I think you also have the advantage here because you are an Arabic speaker, so you're able to see what they say in Arabic versus what they say in English because there's a completely different narrative, right? Like, you know, when you look at Al Jazeera, for example, Al Jazeera in Arabic is very different than Al Jazeera in English. I don't have that advantage because I don't speak Arabic, but I mean, that is a very, very powerful tool that you have as well that you can use to expose the narrative.
Yes, it's enormously different. And then they have, you know, AJ Plus, which is like Al Jazeera's version of BuzzFeed, which is, you know, it's such a, oh, it's so deceptive. It's so deceptive. But, you know, without further ado, let us jump right into the core of it. Goldie Khanum, what do you see as the main reasons Iranians want to overthrow the regime?
In order to understand why Iranians want to overthrow the Islamic Republic, you kind of have to go back into what brought the Islamic Republic to power in the first place. And 1979 Islamic Revolution is not something that happened overnight. It was something that actually began in 1941 and slowly gained traction. And it was basically the alliance of the communists and the Marxists that eventually then were promoted by, you know, Jimmy Carter, the Democrats, United Kingdom. And it was a very, very small minority of Iranians, you know, so-called Iranians, who wanted to overthrow the Shah. The vast majority of Iranians, I would say about 80% of them, were just silent and did not get involved. And that's because you know, as like my mother explains to me, because my mother was a teenager when the Islamic Revolution happened, she was like 14 or 15. She said no one took them seriously. No one ever thought that Iran would turn into what it is today. So the communists and Islamists weren't taken seriously. But then, of course, things got really hectic and violent. And then the Shah left in order to calm things down. And he never abdicated, by the way. The Shah never actually abdicated. He left. And then as soon as he left, Jimmy Carter and Air France flew in Khomeini, of course. And even when the Islamic Republic came into power, they came to power on lies, very similar to what you're seeing in New York with Mamdani, and how Mamdani promised free bus fare and all that. The Ayatollahs did the same thing. They said, we're not going to bring about, like, we're not going to force Islam on anyone. We're going to give free bus fare, free water, free electricity, just vote for us. So then there was this vote, so-called vote. It was basically done at gunpoint. And so people didn't have a choice. People had to vote for the Islamic Republic. Otherwise, the men with guns would murder them. And then the Islamic regime came to power. And ever since then, they have imposed Sharia law, a very, very barbaric 7th century version of Sharia law on Iran and Iranians, something that really does not fit with our cultural identity, because our identity as Iranians goes back thousands of years to the time of Cyrus the Great, and even older than that, right? Like, you've got various civilizations prior to that feed into the Persian Empire. So we've always had this very distinct Iranian identity. And prior to 1979, we were an incredibly religiously diverse group of people, because freedom of religion was, one of the main, fundamental principles during the Persian Empire. So Cyrus the Great and the Cyrus Cylinder, freedom of religion was enshrined in that. Prior to 1979, of course, the vast majority of Iranians were Muslim, but they were secular Muslims at that time. So we had Iranian Muslims, Iranian Jews, Iranian Christians, Zoroastrians, Baha'i, everyone lived in peace. It was only when the Islamic Republic came to power that they basically fooled Iranians. So they came to power based on a lie. They took control, and they have been murdering us Iranians in the name of Allah and Islam ever since. And the reason that Iranians want to overthrow the Islamic dictatorship is that for 47 years, they have brought nothing but death, destruction, and despair to the Iranian people. There is not a single good thing that anyone can point to that the Islamic Republic has done. And actually, you know what? That is not true. The only thing that the Islamic Republic has managed to accomplish is to turn Iranians away from Islam. And that's because they have tried to indoctrinate Iranians, myself included, because I was born after the Islamic Republic took control. So I've never seen a free Iran. So they've tried to indoctrinate, future generations. All they have done is they have turned Iranians away from Islam. And I would say right now that less than 30% of Iranians are actually practicing Muslims. The vast majority are either atheist or agnostic. And then there is also a growing underground movement of Iranians who are converting to either Christianity or Zoroastrianism.
That's so cool. That's so cool. Does Zoroastrianism normally take converts, or is that something that's been recently developing? Because I think from what I read, the little bit that I read about Zoroastrianism, that was that it's something that you're born into. Is that correct?
So that is correct when it comes to the Zoroastrians who are in India, so the Parsis. If you're in India, if you're part of the Parsis, that's something you have to be born into. That actually has a historical reason for that. So during the Arab Muslim conquest of Persia, the one that you didn't like me speaking about, yeah. So during the Arab Muslim conquest of Persia in 650 AD, many Zoroastrians fled, and they actually went to India, and they sought refuge in India. And the Hindus at the time basically said, you are more than welcome to come here and practice your faith and live however you want to. The only condition we have is that you don't impose your faith on anyone else or proselytize. So that's why the Parsis in India, they don't take converts, but Zoroastrians elsewhere 100% do take converts, and Zoroastrianism is definitely growing both in Iran and other places outside of Iran as well.
Thank you. Thank you for enlightening me about that. I didn't know that it was specific to the Parsis in India. So Iranians rather, have revolted against their government numerous times. We have seen revolts under Ayatollah Khatami. We saw the Green Revolution in 2009. And the most recent one, the one that had the most strength behind it, was the Mahsa Amini revolt, the Zan Zendegi Azadi riots, or revolts rather. Has the spirit of resistance changed since then?
So, 2009 is definitely the first time that we saw sort of this mass uprising, but there have been uprisings before that as well. In fact, if you look up Iranian women protest hijab in 1979, you can see, tens of thousands of Iranian women out in the streets back in 1979 protesting the mandatory hijab. So the will has always been there. It's just, of course, unfortunately, in the beginning, the Islamic Republic was incredibly powerful. And, the 2009 Green Movement, the Islamic Republic was able to sort of change the narrative, because that was the first time people really went out en masse. And they managed to change the narrative and say, we don't really need to overthrow the regime. We can just reform the regime. We can change it from the inside. And so they fooled Iranians that way, unfortunately. They also fooled a lot of governments into thinking that the Islamic Republic can be reformed. But as we know, the Islamic Republic is a brutal dictatorship, murders Iranians. Even to this day, I actually just posted on my Instagram, this past year alone, almost 1,500 Iranians have been executed by the Islamic Republic, almost 90 in November alone. And we've just started November. Things have grown. And, the Mahsa Amini demonstrations 3 years ago, I think for the first time really showed the world what it is like in occupied Iran, thanks to social media. And it also showed that Iranian people are sick and tired of this Islamic dictatorship. Now, one of the reasons that I believe the uprisings in 2022 weren't successful is because we didn't have a leader at the time. There was not someone that Iranians really could rally around to lead them. But that has significantly changed today. And I think given what we are seeing today in occupied Iran, the regime is weaker than ever. And I do know that the Islamic Republic is going to fall. I think what people might not necessarily understand is how it's going to fall. If you look at totalitarian dictatorships in the past, no totalitarian dictatorship has ever been overthrown by people just going out into the streets. And the reason is because that totalitarian dictatorship has access to all the weapons, all the guns, has access to the military, and Iranian people are unarmed. So every single time Iranians rise up, they're brutally suppressed, not just by regime forces, but they also bring in their proxy forces like Hezbollah, the Houthis, Hamas, Hashd Shabi. They also bring in proxy forces from Nigerian militants and Pakistani militants as well.
Wow.
They bring people in from all over. The Islamic Republic has no support from the Iranian people. They stay in power through violence and force and suppression. So I truly believe the Islamic Republic is going to be overthrown, but I don't think it's going to be by people taking en masse to the streets. I believe what's going to happen is we're going to see a military coup d'etat. And there's actually something that happened today. I just posted about it right before I came on your show. It's a video that is now circulating like wildfire. And just thinking about it gives me goosebumps. It's two Iranian men dressed in military uniform. And they go into a metro subway and they fly the pre-Islamic flag of Iran, the lion and sun flag, the one that's behind me. That's the real flag of Iran. So today in occupied Iran, in Tehran, two uniformed Iranian soldiers are holding this flag, and the Iranian people around them are chanting, "Long live the king." So that to me shows that there is growing military defections within the country. And I do believe that at some point, sooner rather than later, we're just going to wake up and hear the news that, there's been a military coup d'etat. And once that military coup d'etat happens, that's when I think Iranians will then take to the streets to finish the job, because they will know at that time, when they go to the streets to finish the job, the military will be behind them and they won't be murdered by the Islamic Republic forces.
You just answered like at least two questions I had prepared for you, but it's okay because I have more.
Wow.
But thank you so much. That was a excellent in-depth answer. So let's zoom out a little bit. We know why Iranians are fighting against the regime, but what's holding them back? I'd imagine a lot of what's holding them back is the reluctance from the quote-unquote free world to really turn the screws on the regime. So how have Western governments, including Canada and the USA, helped or hindered the Iranian people's fight for freedom?
Every single time Iranian people have gone out, foreign governments have unfortunately taken the side of the Islamic Republic by throwing them a lifeline. Now, a lot of people think that what Iranians want is foreign intervention or boots on the ground. That's 100% not true. What we are asking for is for Western governments to stop enabling the Islamic Republic, to stop throwing them a lifeline, and to stop giving them another chance, because you cannot negotiate with terrorists. And, so I do believe that Iranians, they're not necessarily waiting for foreign intervention, but for Iranians, every time they go out, they've been brutally massacred. And it's been in vain. They've lost their lives in vain. So it's not like Iranians are afraid of losing their lives. They just want to make sure that when they go out, they're not doing it in vain. And one of the biggest examples I can give, like a recent example where Iranians were disappointed, is during the 12-day conflict, that final night when Israel and the IDF were really, really going after Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps military bases and assets. And we all thought that Khamenei was going to be next. And from what we have heard, there was going to be this huge operation. And then at the last minute, Trump called and pulled them back because Trump thought that he could then, somehow negotiate with the Islamic regime. Of course, that turned out to be false, because you cannot negotiate with brutal dictatorships. But, that was very disappointing for Iranians. Many of us would have liked to see that continue. And, I want to be very clear. It's not that we're happy to see bombs falling in our country, but the way I like to describe the 12-day conflict, the analogy I like to give is, think of a cancer patient, someone who has stage 4 terminal cancer, and the only possible way of rescuing them is through surgery, where you have to go in, you have to cut up the body, and you have to take out all the cancerous parts, right? You're not there to attack the body, but the body is going to be injured by virtue of going after the cancer cells. That's exactly what Israel was doing. Israel was going after the Islamic regime. Israel was not going after Iranian people, and Iranian people knew that. So the happiness that Iranian people had was not because of a conflict, but because Israel was going after the people who have been murdering us and oppressing us for the last 47 years. And many Iranian people were hopeful that Israel would have just completely decimated the Islamic Republic, because then at least the Iranian people would have been able to go out and finish them off.
Yeah, the end it came as a huge disappointment to me too, Ms. Ghamari. I have to be honest, it was really, really disappointing for me. In fact, when I saw that, after the IRGC launched its retaliatory strikes that they sort of declared in advance against, I think, a U.S. base in Qatar, I was like, oh, that's it. They're gonna. I knew the ceasefire was right around the corner, because they rehearse these things behind the scenes, because they know if they actually strike a U.S. base with U.S. servicemen on it, then they know it's really, really on. And they can't risk that. It's similar to what happened after USA took out Cutlet Soleimani, right? They called the Iraqis and told them, hey, hour and a half, we're going to hit this base. Please evacuate the troops. So it was incredibly disappointing. And what bothered me the most is knowing the way it ended and knowing Islam like I know Islam and how Islamic regimes operate. It's that although the IRGC was heavily degraded, its ability to project force outside of its borders was heavily degraded, the only option that they had left was to project their strength inward against their own people. How bad has the oppression gotten since then?
It's terrible. Like I said, just in November alone, and we're, November 12 right now. So in, the first 12 days of November, at least 90 people have been executed already. The one thing that the Islamic Republic is good at is murdering Iranians and suppressing Iranians. So it's just been, a nonstop campaign. The Islamic Republic is kind of like a wounded animal, and wounded animals are incredibly violent and dangerous and savage. So it is very difficult in Iran. It is a very dangerous situation, but there is hope. And like I said, today this image that came out of these two soldiers who are waving the lion and sun flag, that gives people hope. So as dangerous as the situation is, Iranians are getting ready and Iranians are getting prepared, because my understanding from what I'm seeing on social media is that there is a lot of movement behind the scenes. And His Royal Highness Reza Pahlavi, he's the Shah of Iran in exile. He has mobilized a team to help him lead a transitional government. There's a website. My understanding is that the number of people inside of Iran who have defected from the Islamic Republic and have gone to the side of the Iranian national resistance is somewhere between 50,000 to 100,000, if not more. So it's not an insignificant amount. And I personally believe the number is going to be much higher. I believe that when the time is right, we're going to see the collapse of the Islamic Republic, and it's probably going to be very quick, because there really is no will, aside from like the core sort of fanatics who are diehard Islamists and jihadis. There really is no will or appetite. The country is under a severe water crisis right now, water shortage. There's no electricity. The economy is in despair and ruin, and people are just fed up with the Islamic Republic.
Yeah, so that brings me to my next question. With all these things considered, what goes on in the mind of the average Iranian who absolutely despises the regime that oppresses him? The most anti-Iranian thing that you can think of is the IRGC. It in no way represents Iranians. What do you think goes on in the mind of the average Iranian who wants freedom when he sees these Western progressives who run around with the IRGC flag, the Palestinian flag? I mean, let's be honest, these people are apologists for terrorism. That's all they are. Meanwhile, you have people in Iran who are literally dying for freedom. They're dying for freedom. They're dying to have the same freedom that these people have.
So there's a very common sort of slogan or chant that we Iranians have in Persian, and it goes, Nang bar sefasid molla chapi mujahid, which means curse the three corrupt. What are the three corrupt? Mullah, which is the mullahs, chapi, which is the leftists, and mujahid, which, fighters of jihad. Mujahid refers to, it's actually the communist Marxists, because as crazy as it is, we actually do have a Marxist Islamist cult called the Mujahideen Khalq. And you would think, what, yeah, exactly, the MEK. So, this slogan perfectly encapsulates what Iranians think. Nang bar sefasid mullah chapi mujahid, which means curse the three corrupt, Islamists, leftists, and communists. And so there is no appetite at all for these woke Western. But the one thing that I will say is that for a lot of Iranians, both those who are in Iran and outside of Iran, when they see what's happening in the West, when they see these, ignorant, Westerners who, like you said, are waving the flags of these terrorist groups and ideologies, a lot of Iranians are saying, they deserve it. Because a lot of Iranians are very bitter and upset by the fact that Jimmy Carter and the Democrats enabled the Ayatollahs, right? They're upset by the fact that UK and France promoted the Ayatollah and brought them, brought that Islamist jihadi person to Iran and turned it into the 7th century Islamic hellhole it is today. Now that they're seeing what's happening in the West, and keep in mind, a lot of that ideology, it's not just Al Jazeera, it's also being funded by the Islamic regime itself, right? Like a lot of like these Islamic and cultural centers that are now operating in the West. And so Iranians see that, and a lot of them think this is karma, right? The West is going to have to learn the lesson the hard way, because what you're seeing in the West right now is exactly what was happening in Iran in the 1970s. And, I try to raise awareness about it quite a bit. Like it's what I do constantly, because I want to warn people in the West about this, because there are lessons that people can learn from 1970s Iran. And yet, I'm accused of being Islamophobic. I'm accused of being racist. I mean, it's just the any sort of accusation you can think of, I've been called, just because I'm raising awareness about the dangers of radical Islam and communism.
There's nothing hateful about reality. And unless people are blind, all you're doing is just preaching the reality of the situation. This is the brutal reality that Iranians live with every day. You did bring,
and I also want to make it, I want to make it very clear as well. Like, I'm not here to talk about religion, and I've never talked about religion. Like, I believe, religion is a private thing, and whatever you believe privately is your choice and your right. My focus has always been on like Islamic terrorism and political Islam, right? Like that's what I really focus on. And what people don't realize is that there are also a lot of Muslim Iranians who are fighting against the Islamic regime, and people, like a lot of people, don't pick up on that nuance usually, because they just buy into the narrative.
There's even clerics, Shia clerics who are against the regime, who want to see the regime fall because they see it as nothing more than corrupt, and they want to bring their religion back to a spiritual private matter rather than a political one, which actually brings me to sort of my next point, and it ties into what we were just talking about with these religious centers in the West and Mamdani himself. In Shia Islam, there's really only two people that could be considered potential leaders. There's Ayatollah Sistani. He's in Najaf, Iraq, and he's more of a spiritual leader. He's not involved in politics. The only other person is Ayatollah Khamenei. That's really the only other person. He's the one that enjoys the most support, especially in places like Iraq, Lebanon, Yemen, and among the Shia in the West. And if you notice, a lot of these clerics that come to teach in the West, and they head the mosques in the West, they studied in places in Iran, like the Hausa seminaries in Qom. And, I can't say for sure, not whether there are direct links, but really it's hard to pretend like there's something isn't there.
It's 100% a direct link, 100% a direct link, 100% a direct link. And you cannot claim that you're part of, you cannot claim that you're separate from them when you've gone there and you've studied. It's all part of the same ideology. And they have damaged their own reputation by bringing politics into this, and by basically, imposing their 7th century views on people, and now they're exporting it. And a lot of these sort of cultural centers that are funded by the Islamic regime are actually basically indoctrination hubs. I don't know if you know, but last year in Hamburg, an Islamic cultural center that was funded by the Islamic Republic was shut down because the German government found out that they were actually using it as a front to indoctrinate people in order to indoctrinate people and basically convince them to overthrow the German government and turn it into an Islamic dictatorship. Because again, you have to remember what happened in Iran in 1979. It didn't happen overnight. It took 40 years almost. It started in 1941, and they slowly built up until they had enough support and enough momentum to overthrow the Shah. And that was basically like, it was only about 10% of the population that was involved in bringing about the Islamic dictatorship. The other 90%, well, 10% were opposed, and then 80% were the silent majority there.
Right. Pivoting towards Israel, you yourself visited Israel, I think, last year, and I remember that I believe you were in Haifa when there was a Hezbollah missile attack. What was that like for you?
I mean, I wasn't scared. I wasn't scared. Of course, there's like an adrenaline rush, right? And you hear the sirens, and then you go into the bomb shelter. And that was actually, it wasn't just one or two rockets that Hezbollah fired up. That was the one where they fired like almost 100 rockets at Haifa.
Wow.
So we're sitting in the bomb shelter, and we can just hear pop, 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 right? And I think the thing that struck with me the most is how normal it seemed. Oh, sorry.
You still with me?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
I got a call on my WhatsApp, but my WhatsApp is linked to my phone. Wait, let me just turn off my WhatsApp here.
Oh yeah, that happens to me too. I had to turn off my notifications.
Jeez. Okay, sorry about that. All right,
You're
so
good,
let me rephrase that. What struck me the most about what happened with Hezbollah firing the rockets is how normal it seemed for people who live there. It was just like another everyday occurrence. And it's like you hear these massive air sirens, you run into the bomb shelter, and then as soon as it's done, you come out and it's just, life as usual, business as usual. And, half an hour later, we're, in this restaurant, eating lunch and speaking with people, and everyone's just going about their day. And it just struck with me. I mean, this is not normal. People should not have to live like this. I mean, nowhere else in the world do people have to deal with this constant threat of being bombed. And one of the things people don't realize is that there are bomb shelters everywhere in Israel. And everywhere we went, first thing that we were told, doesn't matter if it's a restaurant, if it's a hotel, if it's a university, wherever, the first thing that we're told is, in case of an air siren, this is where the bomb shelter is, and this is where you go. And it just struck me as that really resonated with me, because again, I'm thinking no one else in the world ever has to, I've never been to a country where the first thing they say to you is, welcome, this is where the bomb shelter is in case a bunch of jihadi Islamists try to murder us, right? And no one ever talks about how this is a war crime, because it is literally a war crime to just indiscriminately throw missiles at civilian targets, and yet that is what is constantly happening to Israelis, right? Not just Israelis, to Arab Muslims who live in Israel as well, constantly under the threat of these missile attacks. But no one ever speaks about this. No one ever points out the war crimes by the Islamic terrorists.
Even if we bring it to sort of a spiritual level, the Iron Dome protects synagogues just like it protects the Al-Aqsa Mosque, just like it protects the Baha'i Gardens, just like it protects the churches. Everybody in Israel is protected under the same military, under the same defense systems, and anybody, and I mean anybody, could be murdered as a result of these missiles. I mean, during the 12-day war, a mosque was struck. But I never heard the other side complain about that. It seems like, all is acceptable if it means you get to, hurt Israel or try to wipe them off the map. And it's like what you said, it is a war crime. And it's actually a double war crime, because not only are they attacking civilian targets in Israel. But then when Israel strikes back, their people aren't allowed underground into the tunnels to seek shelter. They didn't build bomb shelters for their people. No, they subject their own people to the bombardment that Israel unfortunately has to carry out in order to defend itself. So it is a double war crime, and that's something that people really don't bring a lot of attention to. I mean, I have not met a single Israeli that wants to be in this situation. They don't want this situation. And, while we're on the topic of Israel, I actually read an article yesterday from the Jerusalem Post about how the effects of the 12-day war has shattered any leftover illusion that Iranians feel about their regime. So now what they're saying is that in places like Tehran, they're just no longer afraid. They don't care anymore. They're going to go out and they're not going to wear hijab. That fear, that inhibition of fear is no longer there. Can you speak to that?
So the fear is definitely no longer there, but it's also a different reality. I mean, there are young Iranians who are going out without wearing hijab as a sign of civil disobedience. What the Islamists are trying to do is they're trying to portray these images of young Iranians without wearing, who are not wearing hijab by saying, look, Iran is free. You don't need to have a revolution because it's already free, right? So they're trying to twist the narrative here. But again, you have to also have to think about the fact that, North Tehran is like a rich, affluent part of town. It is much easier for young people to, get away with maybe not wearing the hijab there than it is in, let's say, smaller, different parts of town, or maybe less affluent parts of town, or rural parts, or, places like that. And the other thing that also doesn't make it into the news cycle is a lot of times, when someone who isn't wearing hijab does make it into the news, the Islamic regime will wait a few days until, the story has played out. And then when people are distracted and looking away, they'll go after them. So, in fact, this actually just recently happened to an Iranian taekwondo athlete, I believe. She, just a few days ago, she posted an image of herself on her Instagram where she was competing in taekwondo and she wasn't wearing hijab. That was a few days ago. As of now, she has been arrested. Her whereabouts are unknown. And her Instagram account, which had 157,000 followers, has been shut down. So this is what people don't see. Yeah, they don't see the second half of the story. Everyone sees the first half, right? Where, oh gosh, people are walking around without hijab. Iran must be free. But they don't see the second part where, after a few days, those people are then arrested, taken away, their social media accounts shut down. We don't hear about.
This is actually quite personal for me because I have a friend. She lives in Iran. Her name is Parisa. She was sort of getting getting the ball rolling on, she was becoming an influencer, right? Makeup, stuff like that, stuff that Iranians her age did. And then one day I woke up and the only thing that I saw, every post was gone. Every single post was gone. The only thing that I saw was this post, and it was written in Farsi, something about, this profile was shut down due to values contradicting the Jumhuri Islami, the Islamic Republic. I couldn't believe that this happened to somebody I knew. I saw this in front of me. And to this day, I have no idea what happened to her. I literally have no idea. And
That's the horrifying reality of being an Iranian, right? People don't realize.
No
I mean,
idea.
Yeah, something as simple as having an Instagram profile could get you executed for, corruption against Allah. Yeah.
It's insane. Wow. Talking a little bit more about Israel. I was listening to a podcast this morning, and they were talking about how the Karaj Dam is under immense stress. One of the most existential threats to Iranians outside of the regime, although it does relate back to the regime due to its corruption and mismanagement, is the crisis of water. And Israel, which I think has gets even less water, less rainfall than Iran. I mean, they're experts at irrigation and desalination and just all that stuff. I mean, imagine the day where there's a, democratic Iran that partners with Israel. What would that look like for Iranians facing this water shortage right now?
We already know what it's going to look like because the Reza Shah, or I should say, the Shah of Iran, Reza Pahlavi, he actually sent a delegation to Israel a few months ago to talk specifically about the water shortage crisis, and so that was a very historic visit. And my understanding is that, part of the transition plan, to take Iran from an Islamic dictatorship to a secular modern democracy, includes normalizing relations with Israel. And, from my understanding, from what I've seen on social media, given the fact that there is already collaboration between the Israeli government and the opposition to the Islamic dictatorship, I have a feeling that as soon as the Islamic dictatorship is overthrown, Israel will be going in headfirst into Iran to help Iranians with the water shortage crisis. We have a lot of water experts who are working with Israel, as my understanding is, and we've seen their posts on social media. So that is giving Iranians a lot of hope. That the day after the Islamic regime is overthrown, it's not just about getting rid of the Islamic Republic, but it's also about undoing 47 years of damage, mismanagement and negligence brought about by these evil demonic ayatollahs. And solving the water shortage is definitely one of them. And from what I've seen, it appears that Israel is on board and ready to go in, and I think that's fantastic because a lot of people don't know this, but prior to 1979, Iran and Israel were incredibly strong allies. Iranians and Jews have always been allies. Our allyship and friendship, it goes back 3,000 years to the time of Cyrus the Great. So, it's only been this last 47 years that the Islamic Republic has started this war with Israel. We Iranians, we love Jews, we love Israel. When I visited Israel, it felt like I was visiting my sister's house, beautiful country. And as soon as the Islamic Republic is overthrown, we're going to immediately resume that friendship.
Beautiful. Yeah. I mean, I have to be honest, Ms. Ghamari, today feels like a day off. I mean, you give such in-depth answers. Like it just, you answer my questions well ahead of time. Two final questions before we wrap things up, because I know that you have a busy schedule. I have two books. I have the Shahnameh by Ferdowsi. I have another book called City of Lies. It's a book about Iranian personal stories, how they have to live double lives in fear of the regime. If you could recommend books to people who really want to learn about Iran, what would you recommend? Aside from your own book, obviously, pro tips. That's something we're definitely going to recommend again.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. I would say The Fall from Heaven.
Fall from Heaven. Fall
from Heaven by Andrew Scott Cooper. Let me see if I can find it. I want to get the proper title here. Yeah, so it's The Fall of Heaven. Wait. Where's my thing here? Right. So I would recommend The Fall from Heaven. Wait, what's it called? The Fall of Heaven. Sorry. So I would recommend The Fall of Heaven by Andrew Scott Cooper. That gives a very good and detailed and nuanced accounting of what actually happened during the 1979 Islamic Revolution. Highly recommended.
Okay. And then one final question. What message would you like to send to Iranians inside Iran and to Israelis watching about hope, courage, and the shared future that you envision for both people?
I would like to say that, just like His Royal Highness Reza Pahlavi always says, light always prevails over darkness. And these 47 years have been a nightmare, not just for Iranians, but for Israelis as well, because a lot of the Islamic terrorism and anti-Semitism we're seeing around the world is being funded and promoted by the Islamic Republic. And we have now reached a point where our two peoples have recognized that we have a mutual enemy. And I think that there is a very, very bright future for Iranians and for Israelis after the fall of the Islamic Republic. And once the Islamic Republic is overthrown, we're going to see peace in the Middle East, and we're going to see a new Middle East, one that is a place where we can all live and thrive and grow.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I have one message for them too. To the Iranians, all I have to say is Marg bar Jamhuri Islami, and to the Israelis, Am Yisrael Chai. Miss
Absolutely.
Ghamari, thank you so much. I cannot thank you enough. Thank you so much. And for our listeners, her book is Pro Tips from an Iranian, Your Guide to Unfiltered Politics in the Middle East. Once again, Miss Ghamari, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Kheli mamnoon.
Thank you so much for having me on, Mike. It was a pleasure.
My pleasure, my pleasure. And that's a wrap, folks.